Hello and good evening again. Thank you for joining me. So I will be doing my podcasts earlier, so I have better lighting. I'm working on the lighting, and in the meantime, I'll be using daylight time. It looks better on video, so I'm told. Anyway, today I'm going to make a point which I think is very important, and that is that you count, you matter, and so do your thoughts. And everything has been done ever since you were a child to convince you otherwise, not within your own family normally, but certainly at school and certainly via the media. The whole brainwashing exercise has been, it's only me, I'm all by myself, what can I do to improve things or change things? So the first thing you have to realize is that we are the result of everything that we have thought. And it was Jung that said that in a scientific manner. In a literary manner, the first person to say it was Shakespeare, his character Prospero in The Tempest. And then if you look at the Buddhist, especially the Tibetan Buddhist Veda, which is a minimum of 6,000 years old, you will find that there are entire chapters dedicated to just that, how important your thoughts are on you and the rest of the world and the universe. So the thing here is not to fall into the trap of good people don't have bad thoughts. We all have bad thoughts, but we put them on the back burner, or we forget about them. We don't actually act upon them. There are lots of people we'd like to strangle, but we never do. And there are lots of people who deserve it as well. And it's no wonder our politicians in the UK are suddenly terrified for their lives, because they have been committing criminal and treasonous acts against us, the public. The government has turned on us. So you will see links to substantiate that first thought of mine. We are the result of everything we've thought. So I've put that in the reading list and also in the viewing list. Now, the other thing that we've been lied to about is that if you can't touch it, it's not real. Whereas, in fact, the reverse is true. Anything that you can touch is the result of consciousness. And this you will find also in the very old Vedic knowledge of Tibetan Buddhism, but you will also find it in science. You will find it in Daniel Kahnemann's Thinking Fast, Thinking Slow, and you will find it in Bruce Lipton's work, Dr. Bruce Lipton's work, and I should say Dr. Daniel Kahnemann as well. And they are both in the reading list, and you can also watch a lot of Bruce Lipton on YouTube. It's well worth it. And so basically your health does depend also on your mental attitude. And this idea that solids are more important than that which you cannot touch is completely wrong. It's the reverse. So the more you go into physics, quantum mechanical, and even conventional physics, and you get into the nucleus of the hardest particle known to man, which is iron, you find that inside the nucleus of the iron atom, there is nothing but a frequency, a vibration. And when you graph it and draw it, it actually looks like folded silk. It's quite pretty. But there's actually nothing there. And in fact, there's another physicist, which I haven't put in the description, Nassim Haramein, brilliant fellow, and he will confirm that as well. So other scientists, Buckminster Fuller and Charles Wheeler, who also worked with Einstein, also came to the same conclusion that solids only exist because of consciousness. So there is a collective consciousness, There's absolutely no doubt about it, and we have to create it. Currently, it's being destroyed. Currently, we are under attack, and we have to take the high ground again, both physically and morally. Now, this collective consciousness is what's going to save us. And the only way we're going to create that consciousness is by speaking with each other and listening to each other and listening actively with a view to understanding, not with a view to replying. Now, if you look at The Secret Life of Plants, which came out in 1975, there's been a whole load of work done since which validates this and takes things a step further, but plants are telepathic, and when they're not communicating telepathically, they communicate via a neuron system through the roots, and they actually are not competing with each other in terms of the Darwinian idea of survival of the fittest. It's actually a symbiotic relationship whereby they exchange on a mutual self-help basis, and this has been scientifically proved. It's also been scientifically proved that if you beam positive thoughts at your plant, he does feel it, or she does, and it does show. And they've done experiments with groups of people separated by thousands of miles of the concerned plants, and the plants were in three groups: the neutral control group, the control group, and then the second group, which was plants that had leaves that were purposefully punched with holes, and then another group with the same wounds, exactly the same holes, and exactly the same leaves, in exactly the same place. And you had group A receiving the positive thoughts, you had group B receiving the negative hateful thoughts, and then you had the control group which wasn't receiving anything, and it was group A that recovered far more quickly than group B, and group C, which is receiving the hate thoughts, took a lot more time to recover. And that experiment has been conducted the world over many times. So the power of thought is absolutely irrefutable. And that's just one experiment. There are loads and loads of others. In fact, the police and the secret services all use telepaths and remote viewers and clairvoyants. And in the reading list I have put the book by Ingo Swann called Penetration, where he talks about his work and how he has been all over the world and other worlds as well, looking at things and then having his observations confirmed by the satellites when they finally reach the planets concerned, and also having his descriptions on planet Earth being confirmed by people actually going there. Now, in Secret Life of Plants, you'll even see that they managed to capture a criminal who'd committed a murder because the sole witness in the room was a rubber plant. Now, the police do use clairvoyance a lot. They don't want to admit it, but they do. When they really want someone and they know they've got the right suspect, it's now finding the evidence, they will go to clairvoyance for help. And this is a fact. And it's in the book. Okay, so this power of thought has been used against all of us, which is why the media is so consistently and systematically negative in all its reporting. And the way the articles are written, they always give you a wonderful description of the problem, but very rarely give you possible solutions or the person to contact, or write to your town hall and here's this person's phone number or email or normal mail address, right? So do not feel that you are helpless and that there is nothing you can do. As the Dalai Lama said, have you ever tried sleeping in a room with a mosquito? And that is actually the first step on the ladder, and he's absolutely right. And if you look at the life of the Dalai Lama, someone who was forced into exile and has done wonders in keeping the Tibetan community and culture together and creating perfectly economically and humanely viable cooperatives worldwide, but especially in India, not just in Dharamsala, but all over India. Dharamsala is where the headquarters of his exiled government is, which is in the north of India, not too far from the Chinese border, because he had to flee from Tibet. And you'd be interested to know that Tibetan families still send their children illegally into India so that they can receive Tibetan education and also a normal Western education, and they can actually keep Tibetan culture alive. And that's well worth looking into if you have the time. So you can do something all by yourself as one person, but of course we're all far more effective together, which is why this communication is so important, and which is why I have put links to certain groups that I've already mentioned in the description, and I sincerely hope, if as and when you have the time, that you can make contact, and you don't have to do a lot. If we all do a little and pull together, we're going to get there. But we really are fighting not only for democracy, we're fighting for our survival in terms of food, we're fighting for our survival in terms of health. Because there was a, right. So, the best thing to do, in my opinion, it works for me, is to make a list of all the issues you want remedied, such as fluoride in the water, not to mention managing water as an asset in this country. We are a wet country, we've got enough water and rainfall that we should never ever have something called a water shortage, and we certainly have no excuse for pumping effluent into the ocean. It's ridiculous, and there's no excuse for paying ridiculously high dividends when the water company is not doing its job. Then there are chemtrails, which is another attack on our health. Now, this has been known about for a very long time, even by the United Nations. So something has to be done about that, and we are all going to have to work together for a solution, and we can find the solution, and we will find the solution. So that is something. Then we have local and national government democracy. We have to hold them accountable. We have to let them know that we're watching them left, right, and center all the time, and we have to let them know that they will not get away with this sabotage, with this destruction of our country, our institutions, and our values. They're not getting away with it, and we're not putting up with it. So yes, writing petitions, peaceful demonstrations, refusing to pay council tax eventually. But once again, you don't do this willy-nilly, you do this in a very organized, peaceful, logical and legal way, of which there are many ways legally to go about this. And I've put the links to the groups in the description. So, I would recommend also that you join as many groups and that you communicate as much as possible with as many different people as possible. Now, we all have our preferences, but we can put our preferences aside and be glad to have an interlocutor who has experience in his field, and be very grateful that we can, in fact, move together. Now, everything is interconnected. So do not think that, excuse me, because what you do doesn't get an immediate result, that it doesn't produce results later on, and hasn't influenced other people along the way. It has. It really has. To give you an example of this, the CERN particle reactor in Switzerland was having a lot of problems with its research. So one of the people they contacted was the Dalai Lama, and they said, can you help us with our research on this project? Because the particles, we keep banging them together, but they're not doing what we think they should do. And he said, yes, stop banging them together, because in nature they don't bang together all the time. Yes, there is a lot of stuff happening up in space. Yes, there are explosions and things do collide, but it's not the norm. It's just part of the general mosaic. Just as we don't have car crashes as the rule, it is something out of the norm. So they said, well, what should we do? He said, instead of bashing them together, you take two different particles from two different families on the periodic table. You can put them as far or as close away from each other as you like, and you just give just one of them, a little stimulation, a little tickle, and you will see that the other one will react. And they followed instructions, and lo and behold, it did exactly as the Dalai Lama had instructed. Now, to get a degree in Tibetan philosophy, it does take 13 years, and a degree in Tibetan philosophy does include what we would call quantum and mechanical physics, as well as medicine and all sorts of other very interesting things. And it's also interesting to note that if you fail your exam after 13 years, you can take it again after going over the parts that you didn't pass on. But if you fail it a second time, they say, well, you just have to do it in the next reincarnation, which is quite cool. So this notion of interconnectivity is not abstract, is what I'm saying. Now, I received a letter today from my MP, Robert Halpin. I signed a petition about a subject last year, and he very kindly wrote back several months later, having processed all the signatures and everything that they have to do. And he said, this is what we are currently doing, and yes, we do take it seriously. And whilst he didn't go as far as our request in the petition, he did actually take the time to reply and say, this is how far we can go, and this is what we are doing, which is, I think, good in that he wrote to everybody, not just me, and secondly, he did detail how far they can go at the moment. So they are actually listening. That's my point. They are taking note. Now, excuse me one second. The whole point is that we are in a situation where we have to defend ourselves, and we have to do it legally, we have to do it with courtesy. It takes a lot of patience, it takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, but we will get there. And do not think for a moment that your actions are wasted. It's just that sometimes you don't see the results. And just to give you an idea of, once again, what you don't see but something's happening. Water has a memory. Water has a memory. Now, I could give a whole list of references on that, but it once again validates that everything is connected. So, please do speak with your friends, your neighbors, join groups. Go like a bumblebee from flower to flower, learning from everybody, and then putting it together your way with your individual stamp, but also as part of a group dynamic as well. And once again, as I say, listen not to reply, but to understand. Then, when it's time to reply, you're replying in a far more constructive, long-term way. Now, I've listed some groups there, and I really would like to congratulate them. There's Peacekeepers, which will inform you about your rights and about the council tax question. There's Council Watch, which shows you how you can hold your local council to account. And I really have to congratulate Rachel and her team. And then there are all the various podcasts which I have put in the description below. But do not hesitate to write letters. Do not hesitate to sign petitions. Do not hesitate to go out and peacefully demonstrate. I can't stress the peaceful enough. And do your own podcasts as well. Do everything. Just keep communicating. What you do, what you say, and what you think does matter. Thank you very much. Have a very nice evening, and the lighting will be better on the next podcast. Good night.